Newcastle.
Deputy Speaker, well, offshore wind is booming globally. And as an island nation, Australia has a coastline of more than 60,000 kilometres with very high wind resources indeed. And with that comes so much potential now for offshore wind. Already there are over 10 offshore wind proposals in Australia just waiting for legislation now to be passed by this Parliament in order for their projects to be given the green light. One of them being off the coast of my home city of Newcastle. These projects promise enormous generation capacity, tens of thousands of jobs in the construction phase, thousands of good ongoing jobs and billions in investment. And importantly, most of these proposals that have been waiting for this government to act for some time now, most of these proposals are sitting alongside our traditional energy regions, where we already have very strong infrastructure in place because of the electricity grids we have in our regions. It's regions indeed like Newcastle and the Hunter who have the most to gain from a thriving offshore wind industry. One single turn of an offshore wind turbine can provide as much energy as a whole day's worth of rooftop solar. And these turbines can turn 15 times per minute. Around the world, more than 35 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity are already in operation, with expected increases up to 80 gigawatts by 2030 and 2,000 gigawatts by 2050. Currently, Australia's entire national energy market is around 55 gigawatts. So that is the enormous potential that awaits us all. We have more offshore wind resources than we could ever possibly use ourselves, and that means that there is a lot of potential for exporting globally. Exporting potential that regions like Newcastle and the Hunter could benefit from. It is deeply regrettable that all of those benefits have been on delay for so long because of the inaction of this government. Credible offshore wind projects have been waiting now for more than 5 years for this legislation. This is a government that has been in power for 8 long years, and they have spent those years fighting each other to figure out how they get onto a pathway to net zero. 8 years in government, and all they can deliver for regional Australia is a $31,000 promotion for one of their mates who doesn't believe the wind blows at night. This government is more interested in their own self-interest than what is in the national interest. And as a result, cities like Newcastle have missed out on job opportunities because this government has dragged its feet to bring critical legislation like this before the House. Now that this government is trying to play catch-up so that communities like mine don't miss out, hopefully, on some of the great opportunities for jobs and industry in our lifetimes. Opportunities for new traineeships and apprenticeships, for our local manufacturing and supply chains, for our seafarers and the blue economy workers, and for those currently working in the traditional resources industries. Newcastle can be a renewable energy powerhouse. Not only do we have the capacity to manufacture the parts needed for those wind turbines, we also have the deep water port to export wind turbines. You cannot find many places in the world where you have the rail infrastructure, the manufacturing capacity, and the deep water port to produce and export offshore electricity. Investors have been waiting and waiting for this government to get its act together to legislate for offshore electricity. It's seriously ironic, given the Morrison government's obsession with technology, not taxes, Now that the legislation has been introduced, it's time for us to move fast. We don't have a moment to waste. Several of the submissions from the business community to the Senate committee have already made clear that the government must move quickly to declare zones, so our wind zones, and to award licences so that investors and industry can get on with the job. But let's not kid ourselves. There are some issues with this legislation before the House today that we on this side of the chamber do not feel have been adequately addressed. In particular, Labor has concerns over the bill's work health and safety arrangements. The committee heard substantial evidence that the government has not adopted the harmonised national workplace and health and safety laws in these bills. Instead, the government has opted to amend those laws to the point that they are actually no longer recognisable. Without harmonisation of the WHS frameworks, we may end up with a situation where a worker could be subject to one regulatory regime onshore and a second while in transit on a vessel and a third while working on an offshore renewable project. That poses confusion and risks for both workers and employers. To be fair, there is disagreement on these points, including between the department, the regulator, and stakeholders representing both employers and workers in the industry. Given this significant difference of opinion, Labor urges the government to urgently undertake further consultation on both the content of the WHS provisions and their coverage. Australia has some years to get this right, during the feasibility period before construction begins, and it is crucial that we do that. The committee also heard consistent evidence that the merit criteria for licences should ensure benefits for local workers, businesses, communities and First Nations people. The committee heard that it was important for this requirement to be reflected broadly in legislation in order to allow and ensure that they are reflected in detailed regulations. Labor encourages the government to consider a legislative amendment to ensure benefits for local communities where these new energy industries will be situated. Already we have seen countries across the world include local procurement targets for offshore electricity within their local supply chain, development strategies and their procurement policies. For example, in March 2021, the US Biden administration announced 3 coordinated steps to support rapid offshore wind deployment and job creation. The first was advancing ambitious offshore wind energy projects to create good-paying jobs. The second, investing in infrastructure to strengthen the domestic supply chain and deploy offshore wind energy. And thirdly, supporting critical research and development and data sharing. Offshore wind can develop into a single significant source of employment in the maritime blue economy. Australia's share of manufacturing and supply chain activity is, in most renewable energy sectors, is low, but it does not have to be that way. And workers in Newcastle and the Hunter region have seen what this government has done already to our manufacturing industry. In the last 10 years, we have lost 8,500 manufacturing jobs in Newcastle and another 5,000 in the Hunter. That's over 10,000 families who have lost opportunities in the good jobs that manufacturing provides. After years of manufacturing decline, imagine the jobs we can create locally by creating new energy sources like offshore wind, adding those to our current mix. Offshore wind also offers immense opportunity for the green hydrogen production for export. Hydrogen produced by offshore wind directly or through the supply of electrolysis located in port facilities could be a real game changer. And if we produced hydrogen from renewable energy, then Australia could forge a multi-billion-dollar green industry with tens of thousands of new, well-paid jobs. Newcastle in particular has the energy smarts, the industrial experience, the infrastructure needed to be a key player. But first, the policy settings have to be right. There are opportunities now that can begin investment, create jobs, and build confidence in the future of our regions, but only with the right leadership. If we do not start that work today, I am very worried that we will be playing catch up and be left increasingly vulnerable on the world stage because this Prime Minister and this government have left Australia and carbon-intensive regions like Newcastle and the Hunter just left us hanging out to dry. We have the Glasgow Climate Summit in less than 2 weeks away. Only now are we trying to, is the government trying to cobble together a strong enough statement to say they're going to commit to net zero emissions by 2050. Well, Newcastle and the Hunter have got a lot at stake in any kind of energy transition in this nation, which is why we should be leading those discussions, ensuring that no one is left behind as we take full advantage of every new energy opportunity ahead. There are important, very important renewable energy opportunities that are ripe for the picking. But what we've seen from the Morrison government's announcement just yesterday was just all slides and slogans. They only have one plan for the region, and that's a big scam. They have offered zero modelling, zero legislation, and zero new policy. The Prime Minister has just removed the word preferably from in front of the words to 2050, but has announced no new policy to get there, nor shown the public any modelling. It's a question that the Labor leader, Anthony Albanese, has put consistently to government. We saw in question time yesterday, begging the Prime Minister to share that modelling with the Australian people. Bring the Australian people into your confidence. If you believe in the trajectory that you're about to set us on is the best one possible, share that information with the people. But no, that modelling has not been forthcoming. And those deals that have been done with the Nationals, we know there are deals done, but they're being kept secret and hidden as well. Although we do know that one regional job has been secured, the promotion of the climate-denying Federal Minister for Resources has now come back into Cabinet, I understand. So his job is secure. But what I want to see is a plan that's going to make the jobs of tens of thousands of families in Newcastle and the Hunter secure. No more hiding your head in the sand, pretending that everyone can just go along as same and that this is the way it's going to be forevermore. Nobody believes that anymore. Everybody sees the lack of authenticity when the Prime Minister, indeed most of his government members, stand up and try and say that we can just continue as is. No one's wearing that. They know that, their radar can detect that sort of blatant, shameless lying that goes on amongst some government members.
Order. I'll ask the honourable member to withdraw that comment about lying. It's unparliamentary language.
I will withdraw the word lying and suggest then that I have had visits from government members in my regions who have not spoken the truth. They have not spoken the truth. They like to rub a little bit of coal on their face, pretend they're at one with the mining community, but they do not tell them the truth. So I think a change in rhetoric might be all that the Deputy Prime Minister allowed the current Prime Minister to get away with. But it's not enough for the investors, not enough to bring energy prices down. It's not enough to create new jobs and new industries in my region.
The member's time has expired. The question is that the question is that the amendment be disagreed to, and I give the call to the